Alright, what's up again? YouTube. So in the last video, I kind of gave you guys a little window into a couple of ways to upgrade your life, and today I want to talk about one of them in a little bit more detail. The one that I want to talk about is the small steps and making goals for yourself, and kind of what that's done for me in my life. So I have a kind of a process, I guess, that I follow in some way, shape, or form. I never really wrote it down until now, but kind of what it looks like is dream, learn, create, experiment, and reflect. And I'll break down each one of those steps and kind of what took me to where I am in each different subsegment. This is your own life. My mission is to motivate anyone who needs encouragement, give back, and prove that something can be built from nothing. I'm starting from ground zero. Join me on this journey and let's create together. So the first one, dream. This is pretty self-explanatory, but for me, it all kind of started when I was going to school at West Virginia University, and I read a book. The book, everything seems to be going back to books so far, and maybe it will, but the book that I read was The Secret. And while I don't know if there really is such a thing as just reaching out there and asking for something and getting every single thing that you want out of life, there is a huge takeaway from that book, which is to ask the universe what you want in some way, shape, or form. Like, if you can't make a decision on what you want out of life, you're never going to wind up getting it. So the first step is to dream. So what I did, and kind of what started me along this way, was I made a dream board, which is something that they suggest to do within that movie, and just kind of our book, which they also make into a movie. And that just kind of puts in front of you like what you're really after out of life. Mine had a positive relationship, and it had a home, and it had a blank check on it, or a check, I think, for $1 million, and it had some other things like this. Well, at the time I wouldn't have known it, but a couple of years later I had fallen into this job. That was 10 years ago, and I've made well over that after writing myself that check and writing myself that dream board, which is kind of crazy actually for me to think about and reflect back on it. The house isn't actually the house that I had dreamt of that I live in now in that book, but still an amazing accomplishment from that first initial dream. The next step after dreaming and writing down just what you want in life, or putting it on a dream board. For those of you that don't know what a dream board is, it's basically just like a poster board where you cut out pictures and you put them on this board, and it's something that you can kind of reflect at over time. The next step after you've created your dream board, or you write down your list of goals, is to learn something. When it comes to learning, it can be on-the-job training, or it can be a self-development thing. I know there's a lot of people that say invest in yourself first. Warren Buffett says it. Grant Cardone, for all of you guys who have seen him, seems like he's been pretty viral recently, and I've come across a lot of his material. A lot of them say to invest in yourself, develop a skill, hone a skill. For me, when it came to learning, my first opportunity where I could make a good living was a job, and on that job I had to learn from whoever I was working with, because everything was pretty much on the job training, and it was hard. It was away from family a lot. There was a lot of travel involved, and there was also a lot of pressure to perform because it was a high profile job that I had landed. So what I did was I went in early and I stayed late and tried to absorb as much as I could, and every time my boss asked me to do something, I said, yeah, I'll absolutely do that. And that was what gave me the experience to diversify myself and look at different job opportunities and find like a more stable company or a better company. That's what led me to the position that I'm in today, where I'm in more of a managerial role versus when I was first starting out and I was just training to try to figure out what I was doing. And that journey has been, roughly 10 years from start to where I am now. That will lead me into my next point, which is to experiment. So along the way, there are some people that I had worked with over time that weren't particularly happy with the job that I was doing, while I managed to keep my boss happy, some of the coworkers that I worked with weren't thrilled with my work ethic. I always tried to do a good job, but maybe I didn't always have the best perspective of what other people expected of me. I started to invest some energy into that, and my experimentation in relation to my job was calling some of the people that I worked with and asking them, especially, by the way, the ones that were unhappy with my performance, and asking them where I was failing and what I needed to do to improve. And with their directive, a lot of things that they had said was just engagement. They wanted to see more engagement. By engagement, that meant just sitting with them, asking questions, writing stuff down, and then practicing it, asking for the opportunity to practice it, and truly being curious and wanting to do better at something. And that enabled me, when I came to my current company, to be completely focused on performance at that point. I knew that when I was moving from a small family company to a corporate environment, that I was really going to have to do well. And that led me into understanding what management by objectives is, which is exactly what my company does. Through basically quantifying what all of the things that my company requires you to do, I was able to document all those things and then look at how my peers were performing comparatively to me, and then that way I could stand out to my managers, which was important to me at that point, because what I had learned was that I wasn't asking the right questions. And a lot of it is not only asking the right questions, it's being able and willing to execute. So kind of once you figure out what those things are, you have to make a commitment to yourself to surrender some will and do what you have to do to get those things done. At that point, once you kind of have an understanding of what you're supposed to do, and you've tried some different angles of how to perform, then it's time to actually start creating and start producing. At my company, I remember the first day I started, I went out to a job site, and in front of me was one of the biggest messes I had ever seen. And it was my decision to switch companies at that point. And I remember walking out there and looking at this giant mess and pile in front of me, and I just said, okay, let's do it. I ended up finding out later that mess and pile was not all something that I had to deal with, that this was like an experimental job, which ended up being great in the end because it was not as terrible as I thought it was going to be. But I think just the fact that I led with my best foot forward there and didn't complain gave a good first impression to the person that I was working with. And he is an outstanding worker and a role model for me. He's the kind of like up at the crack of dawn, running until the end of the night type of guy, and definitely like a great source of inspiration to work around. So after that, you kind of reflect back and think about, where did I succeed? Where did I fail? And the nice thing about a corporation is at the end of each quarter or the end of each year, possibly more frequently in some of your companies, you get reviews. And I really, really like the reviews, because I like being able to sit down with my manager and understand exactly where I came up short, where I need to improve, and why I need to improve it. And that's the great thing about management by objectives. They clearly define for you what you're supposed to do, and then they clearly define for you where you didn't succeed and where you did. And that's kind of where it all pulls everything together. In the beginning, I would take my objective for the year and I would write them down into that little moleskin notebook that I told you guys about in the last video. Some of them were financial goals, some of them were family goals, and some of them were charitable goals. And that's also a part of this channel too. Maybe some info from my job. The entire point of the video is that if you write these things down and you really want to be somewhere and do something, you can do it. And it's impressive what you can really do if you just write some stuff down. I mean, I'm a person who has gone from not really understanding what I wanted to being out on my own and not really understanding what I wanted, but going through college like many people are. And it wasn't really until I was through college and I was landed in a job where I started to make some decisions about what I really wanted in life. And that's kind of the point where life becomes really cool, because you start understanding what you'd really prefer to be doing with your time, and maybe you could find something that you're really passionate about. I hope that for everybody, and there's so many different ways to do that. One story that comes to mind is the creator of Zappos, and they wrote Delivering Happiness. Or well, not the founder of Zappos didn't write the book. One of the angel investors wrote the book, but it was also a fantastic book. And one thing that I ended up finding out too after the fact was that company was started just by a guy who was going to shoe stores and buying shoes and selling them through his website to somebody, and it eventually ended up growing to be a company that was bought by Amazon for $1 billion. So I think that's the amazing thing about life. And Apple is the same type of story. A couple of guys hanging out in a garage that were sticking Radio Shack, and the company wasn't Radio Shack that they were buying this stuff from, I don't think, but they were sticking Radio Shack parts into motherboards and selling them. And it ended up turning into the amazing company that it is today. So it doesn't matter who you listen to. Everyone says to write your goals down. One of the big reasons you should write your goals down is so that you can go back and reflect on how much you've accomplished. This is the thing that really brings it home for me. I remember that first year, and I should grab that book so I could tell you guys what my goals were for the first year. It was just a couple of things written down into this little book, and at the end of the year, I ended up doubling most of them. And that's the amazing thing about creating goals. If you follow this process of having dreams and asking what you want and learning about one of the things that you want to accomplish, then you kind of just get started and experiment and just start doing it. And then before you know it, you're creating something that learning and experimentation is evolving into a production of something. In the end, you need to reflect back and look at the amazing thing that you've done and be proud of yourself, because it's a lot of work deciding what you want. One realization I had a couple of days ago is that the guys who kind of have their own business and their own thing in life are the ones who dream. And if you're unwilling to dream and you can't stay working your way towards your own path, inevitably you'll wind up working inside of somebody else's dream, and which is okay too, because maybe one of your dreams is to work for Apple. Like every day since you've been born, all you want to do is work for Apple. In those types of situations, you really are living your own dream, or you wanted to do something charitable or something like that. The point is, if you want to do something yourself, you have to decide what that thing is, and you have to follow a process. And the process starts with writing stuff down, taking baby steps towards accomplishing those goals. When you accomplish those goals, look back and realize how incredible of a person you are and what you've been able to accomplish in such a small amount of time. That is a more detailed video on being proud of the small steps, because they turn out in the end to be big. Thank you for watching. If you liked what you saw, please like, subscribe, and comment. If you want to donate to a charity, please put a comment of what charity you'd like to donate to. For each video, I'm going to make a $25 donation until the channel grows, and as the channel grows, the donation will grow along with it. Thank you guys for watching. Check us out on our next video.